Welcome back, everybody, to the U-NATTY States of America. I am your co-host here, Brandon Lirio, three-time Mr. Natural Olympia, here with my permanent co-host, PNBA figure pro and all-around pariah on social media, Layla. Layla, say hi to everybody at home.
And now has a fucking six-pack.
I mean, maybe 8. We're not sure. We haven't actually checked to make sure if those are GMO abs or not, which brings us to our topic for today. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got a choice. In the left hand is a blue pill, which means you can go on living just as you have in blissful ignorance. And in my right hand is a red pill of fitness, because we're here to tell you that everything in the Western world is a lie, and we're going to open your mind. Layla actually brought up this topic, which I'm actually really happy about, because everybody who knows me personally and everyone who's listened to me on podcasts or on my own YouTube channels or whatever always kind of understands that I'm not from academia, but I do tend to lean very heavily towards science-based effective causation as opposed to correlation. I eat this so I feel bad versus I need to have definitive proof that it does X, Y, Z, which will come up later in the podcast to my detriment. But that being said, Layla brought up a very important topic because she actually works in a very healthy restaurant, deals with food on a daily basis, and also tends to have very all-around views that lean heavily toward, if it makes you feel bad, don't do it. If it makes you feel good, then you should do it. And don't be stupid about eating crap food. However, the argument usually comes up, what's healthier, right? American diets versus European diets. And I don't want to say diets. I want to be very careful because that's the issue. Is it food and food regulation versus the diets of the individuals? I think is going to come up much more in this podcast. So, Layla, hit me with it, man. I know that you work in your restaurant and you see people all the time making either really dumb choices or really smart choices. How do you feel about the standardization of the American diet as it stands right now?
Fucked.
And that's it, guys. All right. That's the end of the United States of America.
We'll see you next time. No, I mean, I don't... Yes, do we need to expound on it for the sake of the episode? Yes, we do. But that ultimately... It's really fucked, dude. I'm gonna let you start this one because I gotta eat my red pills.
Sure.
I'm in the middle of prep, guys. If I don't have these carbs, I'm just gonna say cuss words for the entire episode.
Hey, listen, man. If those are the red pills, then I'm more awake than Neo in the Matrix.
Everybody to know, eating these red cherries for the people that can't see me. This was not planned. It was beautifully done. Anyway, yeah, you start.
Okay. Well,
what
listen.
do you think of the American diet?
Interestingly enough, I have a very specific subsect of information that most Americans don't, is that I lived in Europe for several years. And one thing that doesn't come up enough that I think needs to come up is the daily habits and the education of those daily habits on the general population, right? I will say that while I concede 100% in the sense of high fructose corn syrup laden foods generally leading toward a large amount of sugar intake that people would not otherwise be able to intake, I have seen the junk food culture from Australia through Japan, through China, through Central America, and all the way through Europe, having traveled for bodybuilding and having lived in Europe. And I got to be honest, the amount of stuff that's available to the general public between those 2 or 3, or if you want to consider every continental avenue, it's not that different, right? And I've seen my European friends be like, dude, how is the European diet so much more bioavailable than the American? It's not. The same foods are available to us. I want to say that. The same foods are available to us, with the exception of the banning of things like high fructose corn syrup. And I know that somebody in the comment section is going to bring up the correlation, and I very, very, very specifically say correlation and not causation, of red 40 dyes and ADHD in children and young adults in the United States, and that being banned in Europe, which is also a lie. It's not banned in Europe. Red 40, as it's named in the United States, is not used in Europe. it just has a different trade name and is 100% used in junk food in Europe. So automatically, right, some of the things that we read, feel, that we hang on to that are kind of clickbaity, were made that way for a reason. So for me, I believe that the education system of trying to teach people in America what foods are good, bad, or indifferent is sort of taking a huge back burner to a lot of other problems. And I think the reason for that, and I know I'm going to catch heat for this, but hey, it's me and Layla, so what do you expect? Is the inclusion of the government needing to foot the bill for centralized healthcare in all of these other countries. Because if centralized healthcare is a thing, then it is within your best interest to teach your people how to eat, how to be healthy, how to exercise, and how to maintain a proper BMI. So when you don't have standardized healthcare, then really the government doesn't have to include anything in their young adults when they're at school or in college, or even in the doctors who are manning your hospitals, that has to do with educating them on food standards. So
that's exactly what I was going to ask you, is just because they're as equally available in Europe, are they as equally consumed? Because I feel, I don't know for sure, but I just feel like Europeans don't have the same relationship or consumption of food that we do here.
Well, interesting point is that the storage capability of a lot of these foods is vastly different. When I was stationed overseas, the American military had to issue every military member, I don't want to say soldier, but Air Force guys, Marines, Navy guys, Army guys, you had to go to the base and schedule a delivery of an American-sized refrigerator. Because I worked overnights for a year straight when I was a single guy in California. Then I went over to Europe, and I was working overnights every 2 or 3 months, where for 30 to 60 days, I was going into work at 10:30 at night and getting off at 6 in the morning, right? So I don't have the availability to go to European grocery stores during the day because I'm sleeping. So they issue these fridges because there's a 0.0% chance you're going to fit 5 days worth of food for 5 people if you have a family in your European refrigerator, and still you can't. When I say it's smaller, the size of a regular refrigerator in Europe in a kitchen is about mini fridge sized, and that includes the freezer on the top. So the relationship in terms of teaching them about that food has to lean toward healthier food, because you have to walk there to get it, you have less storage availability, and all that food is so fresh because they're taking, one of the things they do tend to regulate there more is pesticides and preservatives. However,
is there anything to be said for portions? Like we have oversized portions that we're taking food home all the time, so we need larger storage, but is that not, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but I'm like...
Now again, I'll concede I haven't lived there since like 2016, which is almost 10 years at this point. But no, I at no point other than Americanized restaurants that were made to do that, right? Because we know these places where it's like, if I'm going to this place, I'm going there because they serve these massive size entrees. But if you go generally to like your local Italian spot, or, if you go to even a sandwich place, right? The proportions are a regular size. They're not crazy here in America. However, if you go to any large
standard,
what's that?
Regular size for what though? The American standard? Like, that's part of the reason I believe that our food industry is fucked, is like, that's a regular portion, but not actually how things are supposed to be.
No, because if I think of all the times I went to like a pasta restaurant when I lived in Germany, or if I was traveling through France, or even when I was in Iceland and I had like a big, like a Euro sandwich, like it was the same size as you would get here. I will say the cheap additives that come on the side, like French fries and stuff like that, is a little bit different. However, what people are failing to make a correlation, I know I just said I wasn't a correlating guy, but they're not correlating between America and Europe, is that I could go to most takeout places in Europe and just get an enormous side of French fries covered in mayonnaise, because they like mayonnaise more than they like ketchup on their French fries. So I mean, hey, listen.
I don't know, man. You can tell I'm like pro fucking Europe and Asia on this one.
I want to say 100% that doesn't mean you're wrong, right? I'll get to that part. But what I am saying is that if we're giving ourselves as Americans sort of a boot to the back of the head where it's like you have these massive proportions and you eat unhealthy, I'm going to put the same scope, which is something I've tried to do as I get older, is take the exact same magnifying glass and move it to the other location. And I've been to those locations. French fries covered in mayonnaise are a staple over there. It literally is. In Germany, they call it pommes frites. In the UK, they call it chips. It's literally just fried foods covered in mayonnaise. It's available to them. However, because you have to walk there, and the standardization of whether or not I can just order it on.
Their cities are walkable as fuck. I spent 2 months over there. You walk fucking everywhere.
Everywhere. And not just that, but let's talk about public transportation too. Like on trains, I have the availability to get like a healthier, smaller sandwich or, you know, a yogurt or a salad. But because we don't have public transport here, the only thing that you have is if you're on the highway, you're stopping to get something. And nobody wants salad on the highway, so nobody's going to carry that on the highway. So it's just McDonald's and fast food and stuff like that.
Because you couldn't stop into a store. That's something I preach about. It's like, I had to get fast food. I was traveling. Bitch, there wasn't a fucking Kroger on the way.
Which is interesting because in Europe, around France, Germany, Poland, down through Italy, you'll go into the truck stops that we have here that are like Buc-ee's or what's that, Love's Truck Stop Center. Theirs looks like a small grocery store. I will admit to that because they know in their food culture, right, that people want at least the choice and the availability of fresher food. But again, does that dial back to the fact that the government has started from a very young age to tell them this is how you should eat, this is what's available, and that's kind of passed down from parents to children? So I knew that this would come out.
I agree with that. Yes.
But I'm going to ask you the real question then, because we know, having existed in the fitness sphere for as long as we have, many of the island of misfit toys that make up fitness competitors and influencers and voices are heavily leaning toward a certain party in the United States that is anti-regulation, right? If you lean right,
okay, yeah,
or
sure.
even if you're dead center and you're a libertarian, which I wouldn't argue is dead center, but it's closer to the center than the right is, you're anti-regulation. I don't want red tape. I don't want regulation. I think that the government does a shit job of doing those things, so I don't believe they should be able to tell me what I can and can't eat. And couple that with this new lab-grown meat scandal that's brewing where people feel like they don't want to eat it. They feel that the government is jamming the other poisons down their throat through regulation, and so they're not going to eat this science-derived lab-grown meat. In the EU, they believe that the government regulation, if it's not legalized, then it is forbidden, meaning that if it's not explicitly authorized, it's unauthorized. Whereas in the United States, we have this burden of proof that states it has to be authorized because the government can't tell me what to do until you can prove to me why it should be unauthorized. So now I ask you the tough question. Knowing what we know about alcohol, cigarettes, prescription drugs, even at the start of the opioid crisis, right? I am very much anti-regulation in the sense of I've been in the military, I've seen the other side, I've seen the fraud, waste, and abuse. I'm not always leaning toward the government does a fantastic job. But you, as someone who hasn't served in the military and has these views, do you believe it would be a better option if the U.S. government adapted more of a regulation-based, if it's not authorized, it's automatically unauthorized stance, even if it relates only to our food?
Well, speaking of, let me
slurp that up. This is going to wind... Hey, listen, I want to let you know someone's recording this right now, and that shit's going to wind up on somebody's OnlyFans page. Look at her slurp up the cherry juice.
It was vegan blood.
Oh, God.
I know.
That was good. No, that was good.
Thanks. No, the perspective that you brought up where if the government does heavily regulate our food and what we're allowed to eat and what we're allowed to have, I do think that does lend itself to them controlling. It's like it would become like big pharma, like, hey, these are the drugs that you should take and are allowed to take, and they're going to funnel and pump those things. Like, let's take a look at history. And again, I'm not academic when it comes to these types of things, but they wasn't the FDA bought off by the sugar company? You
I
remember
will
that?
say this, right? I want to be very clear in the sense of I believe, and I'm just going to say it now, lobbying should be illegal. There's no reason why a regular person who has private interests, especially as it relates to financial statements, being able to go to the government and purposefully mislead them. And if that is what you're doing and it's found out that you did mislead them, you should go to fucking prison. Period. That's how I
Okay.
feel about it. So I wouldn't
So,
say that the FDA was bought off. However,
but
the
wasn't
way
isn't that I thought that was factual. I thought the FDA was bought off by the sugar
here's
company.
how it works. Regulation in the United States is based on a proof basis, meaning that if I can have, let's say, 9 studies run, and I need 3 of them to prove my point, I can
Uh-huh.
essentially build the structure of the scientific method to prove what I want it to prove. And then it's under the burden of proof then of the federal government and the scientists at the FDA to disprove what you have said you were able to replicate. The problem is that all of the things that are going on the FDA's desk, and because of the bureaucratic red tape, this is why people have a problem with regulation, makes it nearly impossible to get to all of these cases and prove it in a timely manner. That's why basically, cigarettes, asbestos, sugar was able to say, well, we can say that it has these positive benefits and look at these negative benefits from the alternative. Then the FDA or any government regulation has to turn around, or a private entity, which is hilarious that we accepted a lot of these things in terms of the regulation of private entities on one side, but then if it's been around in our culture long enough, and we try to steer clear of doing it again, even when the guys on the other side are now trying to prove how unsafe it is, we won't accept it. It becomes a game of cat and mouse. You have to prove that it's unsafe. And so the FDA was able to be proven via the sugar lobbies. That's why I say lobbying should be illegal, is because the tide was turned to prove that sugar, and I'm not a sugar zealot. I believe 100% that carbohydrates and sugar is perfectly safe. However, I don't believe it needs to be in fucking everything. And I'll go into high fructose corn syrup after this, but I want to get to your point. That the FDA has to then prove it's not safe. So I
Okay.
think that the lobbying part should be illegal, but then you're leaving every decision in terms of what's safe and what's not in the hands of a government agency, which we all know based on the last 50, 60, 70 years worth of food
Yeah.
sciences and even regular laws, they're not the fastest or the best at doing. I will
Yeah.
concede that point. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't say necessarily that there was, because here's the thing with conspiracies, right? The way you said that makes it sound like some dude has a "Let's Go Sugar" shirt on and he walks into the FDA and slides a check underneath it. It's not that sinister, and most of the time it never is. But if you look at the back channels, I would argue that the statement that you made, while pragmatic, is generally what people believe, that because lobbying was available, that the FDA was misled and we were told that sugar was
Okay.
safe and fat was unhealthy, but it wasn't.
So you don't think the FDA was purposefully misled? Like, sinister might be too strong a word, but it's like, I'm not going to be forgiving. They knew exactly what they were doing, and I
I
believe
believe
that.
that those who had interest in the success of companies that were dealing in sugar and sugar related products 100% knew that that was going to be the cause of type 2 diabetes, possible heart disease, high blood
Yeah.
pressure, and
Yeah.
purposefully misled those who were less inclined to understand the data they were looking at. And if you would like to then
Under that doesn't
stretch
fall
that.
under sinister in your books, like.
No, because here's why, right? And it's dangerous because if I were to say the FDA purposefully did this, it is what you said it was, sinister, and
Okay.
you know what
Okay.
I mean.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can't say that.
No.
Be-
No. I think we're having a bit of a
sure,
miscommunication. I don't
sure.
think the FDA was sinister. I think they looked at the data and were like, okay, we'll sign off on
And
this. Like,
they should have done more due diligence 100%. And if you want to consider them culpable in that, I 100% would agree with you that your
maybe
job as food scientists were to prove what was unsafe, because that's the way our society works. And the unfortunate consequence of being anti-regulation, whereas every 4 to 8 years it goes from a pro-regulation side of the aisle to anti-regulation side of the aisle, you're never going to get more money to get more people to do this faster, right? You're not. which is why I tend to lean hard on saying certain government organizations have had their teeth removed, as opposed to saying that they were the reason behind something, is because until I walk a mile in their shoes, I'm going to look at the studies that were put out. And again, we talked about this 2 episodes ago when people say, well, who funded those studies? Right, but were you going to fund them? You know what I mean? Like, somebody's got to fund them. And if I'm the sugar guy who has a candy bar company, I'm going to try to prove that my product is safe and healthy and effective at what I say it's doing in terms of its nutritional density. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by NutraBio. NutraBio, with no compromise since 1996, they never hide behind proprietary blends and always tout transparent labels. With industry-leading formulations, all with clinical dosages of ingredients and products spanning from bodybuilders to athletes to just general health clients, NutraBio has exactly what you need to take your goals to the next level. Hit up NutraBio.com and use code word NATTY at checkout to save.
And you've said that before, but I feel like just because I'm not going to fund the study does not mean it's going to be more credible just because they funded. Like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it, but that doesn't make it any more believable or me less skeptical about it.
That's my thing, is this: the skepticism should have raised flags in people who did have the capability to do something and they didn't. And that is the FDA.
That's maybe where I'm arriving.
100%.
With this whole thing. It's like, what if we did unregulate all of our food? Then there is no like implicit trust we have in like, well, the government is keeping us safe. Like, well, shit, all bets are off. We're going to actually have to look into this now, aren't we? Like, what is this thing on the label? I don't fucking know. But now we have this like blanket security that the government's doing that job for us.
Yeah.
Maybe?
So, right. It is a double-edged sword. And this is the point I bring up to people is, let's take a look at, there was a huge listeria outbreak with like salads. Remember that, like back in 2008 or something like that? Maybe a little before that, 2004?
I remember that. Yeah.
Okay. Since the government regulation of testing not just the product, but ultimately how it's shipped, packaged, and tracking in terms of its storage at the facilities, as well as a recall in terms of having a standard operating procedure, that has never happened again. And people forget those things when they say things like the government is ineffective and regulation is ineffective. Regulation, when done correctly, is actually highly effective. The problem is that you have to convince a lot of people who don't agree with one another that you should spend tons of money to make it happen, and you're not going to see the benefit of it because after it's done, you're never going to hear about it again, right?
Wait, so regulation includes the government making sure there are like safe handling and storage practices?
100%.
Why can't we keep that part but cut out the sugar is not bad for you and this is low fat so it's healthy? Like, they do that part too, don't they?
What you're talking about is standardizing ingredient labels, as well as the FDA and the health department, which again, this is one of those things where it's like, do we need this many separate government agencies doing this regulation? And I would agree with you 100%, because you're getting now to a point where you're going, right, but whose responsibility is this? And the unfortunate thing, and I will mention this listeria outbreak again, one of the issues with that listeria outbreak was that all of the lettuce, I don't want to say all of it, a majority of the lettuce was coming from a very specific growth area. And they found out that the growth area was a, what do they call it? A runoff from a feedlot. Now, here's the issue. There is no government regulation, even now, governing how far you have to be away from cross-contaminants. So basically, if I have 1 mile away from the public water runoff, a feedlot for cows and pigs, and then that water runs into a ravine that then gets recycled into watering the plants, and there's a listeria outbreak in the waste of the pigs and the cows, and that runs off and builds more bacteria inside the public water system, there's no regulatory body covering that piece of it, the water that's getting used on it, other than the EPA. And if the EPA says something's safe, well, then it's... So you see what I'm saying? There's so many government bodies as governing different pieces that this is the red tape, right? This is the red tape problem. So I think, to answer your question very directly, if you got rid of all of those government agencies or said, let's deregulate the food industry, then no, there would be no safety body. It wouldn't even be how many calories are in something, right? When we talk about government regulation, that includes that. When you go to areas of the globe that government regulation is low, Like if anybody goes to Mexico or Uruguay or Thailand or anywhere in Southeast Asia like Malaysia, those side of the road food carts
Yeah.
that are just serving food.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how food was served for hundreds of years before regulation, right? The calorie content, the storage capability, all of that is local and federal health departments and the FDA and the EPA. So when you talk about stuff like that, I feel like when we say, government regulation is bad, we forget that we only hear about the times that it is bad and not the times that it's effective. And you working in a restaurant, you can tell everybody listening at home, this can't be over this in a refrigerator. The refrigerator has to be X degrees, and if it drops, all that food has to be thrown out. None of that would exist.
This always goes on the top, has to be this far from the floor, yet temperature always has to be between. Yeah, all of that is super regulated, which
and
I did not
none
realize.
of that would be.
I didn't realize they had their hand in that pot as far as like regulation. Like, yes, there were like safety protocols, like absolutely we need to be following, but I thought this was more of like the marketing of like a package that says this is low fat and therefore it's healthy. It's like, that's not fucking true.
It's generally the same 3 governing bodies that are included in all of those things, right?
Like, have you ever seen where a package says no high fructose corn syrup, and you flip it over and it says fructose corn syrup? And it's like, you motherfuckers.
What's really funny about that too, right? I will very shortly tell you why all of that exists.
Shortly. Ha, here we go.
It'll be quick.
Good luck, fucker. I know you.
Back during the gas crisis, right, we needed a way to produce some type of fuel. And so what they were doing was taking all of these feedlots and making massive amounts of corn. Then gas came back to the American diet in its normal amount of capability, and we had all this corn we couldn't use. So we said to ourselves, okay, let's try and figure out what we can do with this corn, because if we don't, 30 to 50% of corn farmers around the United States are about to go out of business, and then we have a problem. So they created this additive for food that was much easier and cheaper to produce than table sugar, called high fructose corn syrup. However, its molecular makeup and what it does to your system was not inherently studied, and also tends to not be as healthy, right? So really, we have all these high fructose corn syrup products as a byproduct of this gas crisis from the 80s, and we needed to be able to use it. So now we double that back, right? The fact that that's written on those labels was automatically a government problem that was created because we decided to bail out all of these corn farmers and find something to do with it. So even the existence of high fructose corn syrup was ultimately, the way you look at it,
with people in mind. Well, with profit in mind.
Profit, but is that not some version of a bailout of the agricultural system in America?
No, it is. Well, yeah, like a very solutions-based bailout, but yes.
A smarter option to them would have said, we're going to use this high fructose corn syrup, but you have to phase it out in the next 10 years, right? Not that they would have done it. I mean, it's worth billions of dollars.
It's cheap as shit, right? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But I bring all this up to say this is a very complicated thing, right? We like to think it's as simple as saying Americans are fat and Europeans aren't. But look, I would love to have a public rail system.
Isn't that true? Obesity is, if we look at the numbers, like,
yes,
isn't that
but again,
actually true? I see what you're saying. Like, the correlation causation is not
right,
actually.
You have to causate it. We've created, I would argue, a society that allows us to be the free market economists that we want to be in our choices of our dietary and daily lives.
And we're all beautiful. Accept yourself as you are. Don't lose weight.
But I think, too, the comfortability of being able to say governing bodies and, taking care of other people, and that's not my responsibility. You're not going to inherently have a government of people doing the right thing without, I don't even want to say oversight. The government would need to do the right thing if they were also footing the bill for my heart replacement and your diabetes medication. They don't, because they don't care. They don't have to. That's all free market economics. Insulin is sold. EpiPens are sold. Why? What am I supposed to do if I'm a diabetic and I have a type 1 diabetes? I was born with diabetes. What happens if I can't afford my insulin? I just fucking die? I didn't do anything wrong in terms of having a shit job, or, I didn't go to school, or, my socioeconomic path was laden with the fact that I was buying bullshit. What if I was born a diabetic in a lower socioeconomic rung of society? I just get to die? I know, Medicare, Medicaid, all that stuff, sure. Why do we need those things? Is an argument that I at least think is directly tied to at least the sugar and caloric side of FDA regulation. And I think that that's why people have this higher view of European food and Australian food and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, but that's directly related to where that money is spent, and we've already said we don't want you spending it on more regulation. I'm not saying I have the answer, by the way. I'm just saying this is how it goes in my mind. So I'm asking you, having just heard all of that stuff today, if you now were given the choice to, for a moment, deregulate and then purposefully re-regulate the way that their food system and their taxes are run in terms of splitting how the government takes care of its citizens in that manner, would you do it?
Like, this is like gun to my head. I have to pick.
Yeah, you have to make that. You're voting. You have to say it's tied, and you're the one popular vote that will say whether or not we regulate or continue to do what we're doing in terms of our regulation now.
I guess ultimately, what you're asking me is, are we going to get rid of this fruit fly by the end of the episode? Do I care enough about people to protect them from their own personal choices that they make without educating themselves first?
I mean, no. Honestly, you can frame it that way. That's why I have you here, so you can frame it that way.
Right? Like, ultimately, that is, like, you figured it out. I figured it out. Like, sometimes I do walk through life and I'm like, figure it out or don't figure it out.
But here's the thing, right? I can't say I agree with you there. That's the one piece I don't agree with, because I've also lived in the South. And what always cracks me up is that most of the anti-big government, anti-regulation states that lean that way have the highest rates of obesity, the highest rates of Medicare and Medicaid deductibles being used, the highest amounts of reliance on personal transportation between areas, which means no exercise, the lowest per capita rate of low BMIs. The reason I bring that stuff up is to say, you and I are privileged in the sense that we grew up in an area that at least allowed us the opportunity to learn those things. We cannot discount this idea that there are some areas of our country that they don't care enough to educate you in that manner. And your early childhood education is very much going to be laden with, if you don't eat grandma's biscuits and gravy, then you're being disrespectful. And you have to eat all of it because we don't waste food. Okay, well, you're technically being taught then, eat everything that's on your plate no matter what, and don't ask any questions even if you don't like it. You and I made those decisions and grow up in an area that we're not obese. And the vast majority per capita of where you and I both live, we don't have major BMI problems on a per capita basis. But the areas that do are the ones that tend to yell the loudest about being anti-regulation and anti- don't tell me what to do with my freedoms type shit.
But do we care about those people?
That's really what it comes down to, I guess.
Do we really, like, deep down, like, no, I feel like we should have fucking taken, what the fuck is it? Like, the Succession when they promoted it. Like, yeah, we should have, I don't know about
no,
that.
I hear what you're saying.
The States, it's like, can we stop trying to work together as a cohesive country? Because obviously we don't all agree. Like, you want a Texas mentality? Stay in the South, like, go to Texas, and then everyone else is going to go over here. Like, we keep trying to work together. Like, you want to unregulate your food, fine, you know?
Well, what's really funny is you're making a case. You're very seriously making a case about regulation, right? Because I have friends in Texas and Florida and all these other places that are very, very anti-big government right now. And Texas just 2 or 3 months ago said they don't want to be regulated by the EPA or the Energy Department. So they said we're going to rely on our own power grid. And they didn't vote for it. That was just the constituency of their congressional leaders that said, we're speaking for our constituents and we want to be taken off the federal power grid and run it ourselves. Since then, they've had no less than 5 power emergencies in 3 months. the people didn't necessarily vote on every one of those things. They voted for these people, which arguably are speaking for them. And if you're dumb enough to keep electing these people, then yes, I agree with Layla in the sense that you kind of get what's coming to you. But again, I'm very curious in terms of how much of them were educated in terms of what they were actually listening to, instead of just listening to people they thought were smarter than them.
Yes. Definitely.
That's the danger in it. Is if it was everybody in Texas was like, fuck it, I don't want federal government funds and I'd rather run my shit off the grid, and then they had a Texas-sized emergency, I'd be like, well, you kind of asked for that. But I know the majority of people there were like, dude, I voted for these people thinking they were going to do right by me, and they told me that this wouldn't be a problem, and now it kind of is. And even if I vote them out now, I've got 4 years before they can fix the power grid. What am I supposed to do? You know what I mean?
I feel like that falls into the category of like, well, they didn't ask for it because they didn't know better, because they did what they were taught and were force-fed, no pun intended, to believe about this person.
Yeah,
like
that was pretty good.
Thanks.
So do you think that it is that? It's a, hey, listen, you guys voted for these people and now you're just going to have to sleep in your bed because this is how you made it kind of thing?
No, I don't. No, because, I mean, I feel like there's so many loose variables there. Like, you could vote for somebody that you believe is going to do right by you, but then it's like getting into a relationship. Like, you think it's going to work out well, and then it doesn't. And you're like, well, nope, changed my mind. Like, you're a piece of shit, or whatever it is. Like,
yeah, for sure.
It doesn't work, or you did something a little bit different than what you told me. Like, oh, that.
Yeah.
Like, no, you have every right to change your mind and be like, I don't support this decision that I made back then.
Sure.
I think it's... I don't think I ever answered your question, though.
The question was, gun to your head. Gun to your head. Would you vote for regulation?
Vote for
the EU-style regulation in the United States of food.
I just don't... I mean, this... How many minutes in are we?
36 and 18 seconds.
Holy shit! Where'd the time go? Okay, so in 36 minutes and 18 seconds, I do not think I'm educated enough to answer that, because obviously I didn't know any of the shit you just told me.
Hey, here's the thing, guys, of everybody listening at home. That's a very valid thing to say, and more people should say it a lot more often.
I don't fuck about shit.
Yeah.
Now we end the episode.
Big Ozark fan.
Ozark? That TV show?
That's right, that you don't watch? Yeah, that's where the meme came from. I don't know fuck about shit. Yeah.
That show. I hate that show so much.
You just quoted it word for word. I don't know fuck about shit.
That's because somebody said it to me on my Instagram, and I thought it was funny.
You see? You see what social media does to people, guys?
It makes me think people are more clever than they actually are.
That's exactly right. That was written by some really high-priced Hollywood writer. No, but the reason I bring all this up, and I commend Layla 100% in saying, listen, in a 36-minute conversation, I have not learned enough to be able to say X, Y, Z. I think that if more people said that, they would have much more level-headed responses for a lot of things, because there are plenty of things that not only I don't know, but I'm sure if you scoured these podcasts, there's probably a ton of shit that I got half true or sort of missed the point on, or, misappropriated the number for some other reason.
Oh, yeah, I said cholesterol was linked to fat. It's not, it's sugar. Anyway, carry on.
See, there we go. No, but
I realized that later. I was like, fuck!
I think that the interesting point to make is that we like to speak in absolutes, and you brought this up last episode, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Everybody loves that.
Where it either is or it isn't, and it's not that simple, because what some people don't understand about the labels in America and in the EU is that what needs to be listed on American labels also is much more diverse in terms of what's required than it is in the EU. So people will take a look at a label and go, this is the same product. Why are there less things? It's not. You have to break down what makes the compounds in the United States. So people will look at a label and be like, oh, it has this, this, and this. And I'm like, yes, those are the scientific names for B12, vitamin C, and salt.
Wait, and this is happening in the EU or in the United States?
In the United States. They're looking at it and they have this fear of what's on the label simply because they don't know what that says. Whereas in the EU, it would just say vitamin C, or it would just say vitamin B12, as opposed to breaking
required listed?
That's all it has to say. It just has to say that one, like I don't want to say the trade name for it. It is not as extensive in terms of the compounds that must be listed on the label in the EU, which is why they look smaller. There are certain things in the United States that must be listed in bold because of their reliance on allergens or the issues with the health department saying the FDA saying it needs to have high fructose corn syrup, GMOs, whatever listed on the label. That stuff doesn't exist in the EU. It just has to list the ingredients, the caloric content, and it doesn't need bold figures. It doesn't need breakdowns of the compounds. So outside of the inclusion of high fructose corn syrup, those labels are going to be shorter anyway.
What's funny is I almost said that. I was like, when I go to the Japanese supermarket and I pick up a pastry, it seems like it's healthier because it's got 4 things in it. I'm like, hey, you use milk, eggs, and sugar.
Yep. Shit. And the unfortunate thing, too, is that
better anyway.
If you take a look at the ingredients that are used between them and us, again, outside of the preservatives and additives, and I would say how the food is grown in terms of pesticides and things like that, the food is generally the same. And if you're European and you're listening to this, I want you to know the American food section of your store that has that, we don't eat that all the time. The amount of people who come from Europe and come to the United States and walk into like an H-E-B or a Vons or a Kroger or a Stop and Shop and go, you guys do have like all the produce and fresh meat and all this stuff. Like, I thought you guys didn't have this. Of course we have it. The problem is, again, that the way things are advertised and the way things are available to people in different socioeconomic statuses, it just seems in the generalized popular culture overseas that that's all we eat. But having been there, all of that shit is usually available in the EU, just in a different manner. Like the amount of candy bars that they have that we don't, I'm like, damn, we should have this in America. This shit is tasty. It all exists over there. So the reason I brought up that reliance on education and regulation is because my stance has always been on this. I'm not anti-GMO. And for most people, I know I might lose some fans over this. I don't care. I'm not anti-lab grown meat. I think a lot of the shit that you eat from restaurants that's generally considered naturally made is just not good for you. And the unfortunate thing is that I'm now going to say, until you can prove to me that lab-grown meat is not safe for me, then I'm going to at least try it, which is sort of how we started this conversation. My main thing is that it literally is just them not trusting the government. That's why I started the conversation with regulation and the government, is because now people are anti-lab-grown meat because they're anti-government. So now I'll ask you, let's say lab-grown meat becomes the next thing. You going to eat it? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Nirvana Super. Nirvana Super is HMB-infused water formulated by Dr. Naji, who is one of the lead medical research scientists at Vanderbilt University. Originally used to help stop muscle wasting in trauma victims as well as disease-ridden patients, this recovery tool boasts benefits like faster muscle recovery, increased joint health, a rise in physical endurance capabilities during exercising, and can even slow the appearance of aging. It also comes in some seriously good flavors and multiple delivery methods. So if you want to figure out how HMB can help you today, visit feelsuper.com and use Natty at checkout to save.
Probably not.
I'm curious. Why?
Okay. Why?
Yeah, why?
I am skeptical of every new thing that hits the market until the longevity has proven to me it's fine.
Fair.
But I'm sorry, I'm not going to be the guinea pig. I'm not going to be the, if you consume nope. If you guys want to jump on that train, go for it.
So let's make it more.
Let me know how it worked out for you.
I'll pinpoint it more to your career now, too, because I've been asked this question. I have a very fast metabolism. I know that I have vegan friends out there. More power to you guys. The amount of protein that I need in a day and how I eat and things like that, when I retire from bodybuilding, 2 or 3 of my meals per day probably will be vegan at that point or vegetarian, because I would like to reduce how much I'm actually eating. But let's say
wouldn't we all?
There's a meat crisis.
Okay.
And bodybuilding is now priced out of your price range if you're using natural meat. Do you retire from what you're doing with fitness, or do you then say, okay, I don't really have another choice but to eat the lab-grown meat, and I don't have any information that says it's unsafe, I'll give it a shot?
I would say, if at all possible, I would try to find other complete sources of protein that are tried true natural and real. That is honestly probably what I would do.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But now my question is, I tie it all together just like I do every episode.
Unless I go, and maybe I would just do this too, is like figure out exactly what the fuck is happening with this lab grown meat.
Sure.
And then if it checks all the boxes, yeah, sure, whatever. Who gives a shit? Fine.
Education is key, man. Education.
Pause that it would be as bioavailable as animal meat. Yes, it does, because mostly is this not true that most lab grown or synthetic foods are not as bioavailable? You know what I mean?
I don't know about the meats yet, right? Because it's a very specific.
Know about meats yet? Hey, there it is.
I don't, because here's the thing, right? It should be just as simple as fatty acids and proteins and amino acids. Just amino acids that are making up whole proteins. So if that's the case, right? My question to people has always been, like, what do you think it's made of? What we're talking about in terms of sucrose, right? Table sugar being dangerous in terms of people consuming so much of it, right? Table sugar is not really the devil. It just naturally occurs where if you took glucose and put it next to sucrose when it has no dietary fiber added to it, under a microscope the molecules look the same.
Yeah.
It looks the same. It's the same. So
I think what gives me pause is anything that is grown in a lab. I feel like there is an ulterior motive. Like, why wouldn't you just use the natural thing? The natural thing can't be fucked with outside of pesticides, growth hormones,
sure.
Things like that. But if you know you're not engaging or consuming those things, then it's exactly what it says it is. Whereas you enter the scientist, you enter the lab, that's when shit can start to get dicey. It's like, well, what did you do to it? Because now you have if something was done to it, whereas like you go and slaughter a cow and you eat it, like exactly.
Now this all sounds to me 100% like a distrust in the.
I don't trust anybody or anything. Trust issues.
So now I'm gonna tie it all back around, right? So we started the podcast by saying, in some way, shape, or form, both of us relatively believe that the EU and the way they run either their country or their food sources is generally more well accepted as healthy than the United States. So we agree that after the fact, with the information we have, that the regulation of their food industry is probably a better option, and that might include those same scientists backing the idea of lab-grown meat. So is there a problem in your mind bridging the gap between those two things? That the government running food regulation in the EU, which we've said is almost certainly better than the way we run it, and those same people's ability to tell you that the meat is safe, is it the fact that it just hasn't existed long enough for you to trust their data? Like, how do you know that it's safe? You barely used it, even though they're using the same technology, if not better technology, than they use to create the regulation for the other food that we believe is better regulated in the EU?
Okay, I don't know if this is what you're asking me, but I just feel like my personal belief system is the American agenda when it comes to genuinely taking care of its people is not pure.
I could agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So when the Europeans are doing their regulations, looking into their food, deciding what it is and is not okay, I trust them. I trust they take care of their people the way they take care of their people with like severance pay or maternity leave.
Maternity leave, yeah.
Things like they're taking care of their people. We do not care about people. I do not expect them to suddenly have an exception for this part of our regulation. You know what I mean?
I cannot argue with that. I again, having been through the VA system, which is basically centralized healthcare, but just for American veterans.
Oh God, healthcare! Like that's a great example.
I 100% can not only sympathize but fully understand your apprehension. So let's say you move to France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, somewhere in the EU, and their scientists go, "We've checked this out. This company's lab-grown meat is safe and good to go." Would you eat it?
So would I eat it safe and good to go? Yes. Would I believe it is as bioavailable, like as far as a bodybuilding career, like is it the most optimal and efficient source of protein or meat? I would be tentative to believe that if it is my only option because there's no meat going around.
Sure.
Yes, I would. But
I mean, honestly, I can't disagree with you in the sense, especially the last decade or two, that the American government in general just has not done a good enough job showing its citizens that it cares, that it really digs into safety requirements, that, the government agencies themselves are doing a good job talking to one another, and that these budgets and agendas that they have are not bloated with not necessarily Russia levels of corruption, but people pocketing money to try and do other things and keep some of it for themselves and grow a company and no bid contracts and all this other stuff, for sure. And I think that that's the unfortunate thing that we're going to have to either get over or all admit to ourselves in the very near future, is that our view of how the government is running and handling things should not necessarily deter us from changing them forever for the good, where it's like, listen, anti-government regulation was good, and currently keeping some things away is good. However, that doesn't mean that using it for the non-sinister purposes of taking over the healthcare system, the food system, the elderly system, and social security system, that those things are bad things. So it's interesting to hear you say those things, because that is essentially what the vast majority of people, and myself included in a lot of those things, believe, is that it's not that we don't trust anyone anymore to do the right thing. We just don't trust you. You know what I mean? I mean, Layla doesn't trust anybody, but
I don't even trust myself.
Yeah, I mean, but that's good too, right? I would be remiss in my duties as an individual in the human race to say, I know everything I'm going to need to know, and I don't need to learn anything else.
No, you should absolutely be like, do I actually believe everything I believe? No, I guess I don't believe that. Okay. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean,
critical thinking.
The amount of times that it's like 10:30 at night and I'm sitting there, and again, I'm pro legalization, so there I am with my joint, and I'm like, I'm pretty fucking stupid. All the time. All the time. But it makes me do better the next day. I think people need to just be better.
Self-reflect. Think about the things that you have said.
And empower those around you to do the same thing.
Yes.
Right? Let's be real with ourselves and say, it's okay to admit I got bad information. I made a knee-jerk reaction. I thought I understood something. Fuck, we may finish this podcast and someone's going to message me on Instagram or something and go, hey, here's all of the wrong things that you said. And I will, of course, then look them up, source them, and I may have to go, hey, here is a rebuttal podcast about how I fucked everything up about what I was saying. However...
Such a fun episode if we just get to ping pong about all the shit we've accidentally said. Hey, guys.
Oh, it'll happen.
And you know me from a documentary called Hooked on the Look. I was wrong about fasted cardio.
Hey! Oh, man, if I look at some of my old videos and stuff that I made for YouTube and stuff, I'm like, ugh, this is cringeworthy, man. Ugh.
Yeah. No, sometimes I'll watch back my shit, I'm like, I think it's trying to communicate.
Which is hilarious, because we didn't grow up in that era of, like, everything you do is going to wind up on the internet. We sort of came at the tail end of our youth in that area. I feel bad for these kids nowadays, man, where everything you say and do is just constantly in front of a camera.
Yes.
Not good, man.
We've talked about this. Yeah, like, had I had a phone in high school and some of the shit I was saying then, like, fuck, like...
Really bad.
You're still discovering yourself as a person, let alone, like, now you're subject to being exposed to thousands, millions of people, like...
And if you get exposed to the wrong message too early with those things, you can see the trajectory of some of these guys that were social media people when they were like 11, 12, 13, and then they get 18 and it's just ratcheted all the way up to 11, and you're like, I thought you would have got more chill and down to earth like normal people as you got older, but you kind of doubled down and you're kind of a piece of shit, you know? Like...
That's a tough one. Like, I think you have to be quite an individual to overcome that kind of, like, venom from thousands of people. Like, that shit will get into your bones.
Yeah, I think being humbled by getting out of that space and seeing really what the world is about is usually, I would say 75% of the time, that's the inoculation of social media, is going to somewhere where you thought you understood what was going on. And then you really get there and you go, oh, this is not what I thought it was at all.
I think a lot of the things that we believe come from a lot of the incorrect things we believe come from not doing that process.
Yeah.
Like, you just see something on the surface and make this generalization about it. Man, the thing I really want to say is like, pretty much a downer. So let's maybe not go there. But like, no, we're gonna go there. The kids that those 9 kids, was it 9 kids that got shot in Texas in Uvalde?
Yep.
So the people that are still like super super pro gun, it's like, did you have to go to the school, walk in there, and identify your child? Because that experience might change how you feel about guns.
Living in the state of Connecticut, one of the largest school shootings happened here in Newtown. On my, literally was my anniversary, I believe it was. Yeah,
Shit.
yeah. On the anniversary of me asking my wife to marry her was the Newtown shooting, which killed dozens of kids, right? I got 2 kids. It's horrible. And I think that what you're bringing up is something that myself and a lot of other, Second Amendment proponents are. I've always said to my friends who are also pro Second Amendment is like, listen, I understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
But you don't even want to have the discussion. You don't even want to. Don't talk about your talking points. Yes, I get it. Founding fathers, and you got to be able to overthrow the government if they ever try to. That's not what they're being used for.
Bitch, nobody's going to be able to overthrow the government. Have you seen the kind of equipment they have access to? Like,
so,
we don't here with, like, our even our assault rifles, they're going to drop, like, a little, like, drone bomb and kill all of us. Like, no, there is no fighting the government.
Which is another EU type of parallel that we make, because a lot of people like to bring up, gun rights in certain areas of the European Union where everybody, quote unquote, has a gun. And it's like, yeah, but they're not allowed to have it in their home with the ammo. It has to be kept at an armory, or, if they're found to have the ammo and the weapon in a specific, and their red flag laws and their mental health stability laws. So
another regulation, maybe,
right,
that we should be looking at.
And again, I'm going to concede the fact that if you give that decision to someone else, then they will continuously expand the definite. I don't have the answer. But my question has always been to people, you don't want to just have the talk. You can't just dial your emotion down to a 2 and just talk it out, right?
Yeah, what do they say? Challenging somebody's belief system is like challenging their self-worth. That's 100%. How people do these things. And it's like, we have got to get away from that or we're not going anywhere, Like, but ultimately how I feel about guns. When is it that your personal freedom and your rights to own things becomes more important than the greater good? Because obviously we have a fucking problem here.
Right.
Like, I like to drive my car 100 miles per hour. But if they decided we're not going to make cars that go 100 miles per hour anymore because people left and right are dying, I'd be like, well, I guess I got to scrap that freedom because we have a serious problem here and I don't get to do what I want to do because thousands of people are dying like every year or whatever it is. Like,
I believe that there's more discussions that people need to have by just dissociating with what their identity politics are, as opposed to, and it dials right back to the one we're talking about right now. People do not trust the government, and they haven't for decades, right? But that doesn't mean that you don't have conversations about public health, public safety, what can be done to make the generation for my children and the people who are listening's children a better place to live in when we're not here or we have less agency to guide things, right? They're in a position right now where they're very vulnerable, and we're supposed to protect them and keep the how we treat the most vulnerable in our society is how we're eventually going to be judged. And whether it be for guns or healthcare or, in this case, food, I think that we can all agree that we just need to do a better job of setting aside what we thought we knew when we walked into the conversation, ask people their sources for their information, and ask to be more educated and just do better taking care of ourselves and better care of each other, and putting things in place that makes it less difficult to do that as time goes on, honestly.
If you disagree with any of that, you're an idiot. Take the blue pill.
Blue pill it is. Well, ladies and gents, I already took the red pill and I got 1 pill left, and it's going to be blue. So on behalf of Layla and myself, we just want to thank you guys for listening to the United States of America. And remember, please be sure to rate, review, subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts. And Layla and I will see you next time.
Take your red pills.